Well, good morning, everybody. Today we're going to have a look and see how good ChatGPT 4 can be at writing SQL Server code. As a disclaimer, I had a go at this yesterday for my real product, and I was so impressed with the way it worked. I thought it was a good idea to try and share it on a video, so we can see just how awesome ChatGPT is at writing this code and see whether we can stretch the bounds of it to get something that is near perfect. So, for reference, what we're doing is going to take an existing stored procedure and we're going to add some logic to it that isn't your traditional SQL stuff. So it's not just selecting from tables and trying to do filters and joins and where clauses and things like that. It's a bit more complicated than that. So let's have a go and see where we get to. So first thing we do is we tell ChatGPT what we're going to be writing. That helps it with its context. Um, things. I don't know, it's going to give us a load of verbiage back. Okay, when you're finished. Okay, it's gone off on one. ChatGPT does this sometimes. We don't need that. We're better than that. So, okay, here we go. So, I've just copied stored procedure in that's what we're starting with. I will just let ChatGPT come back with its response. Oh, it seems to have got stuck. Okay, let's have a quick look at the stored procedure and see what it does. Okay, so it's called send queued emails. Essentially what we've got is we've got a database table that's got a list of emails with a send after and send before date range. This and all the details you need for the send the email. So who it's going to, what the content is, what the file attachments are going to be, or what the subject line is. Okay. So this stored procedure is effectively pulling all that information out of the database. Yeah, it's called email queue. And using a cursor, we're going to loop through all the records that haven't been sent, that are due to be sent. And then for each of those, we're going to actually call spdb send mail and pass the relevant information through to that so that it can then queue that email up in send mail, and then we're going to update the records to say that we got back the uh, mail manager email ID, and we're going to update that into the database. Now, the problem we're having is that we have this list of file attachments, FA, and occasionally what will happen is one of those file attachments is going to be too large to be sent. When that happens, this process is failing silently, as in it's not giving us an error message, and it's also not giving us a mail item ID back. We spent quite a bit of time with the customer trying to identify what was going wrong. So what we need to do is we need to add some logic to take that list of files in the file attachments, work out how big they are, work out which ones we can attach, and if we can't attach them, what we're going to do about it. Okay, so let's try regenerating that response, see whether we get a result. Okay. Okay, so let's put that into some text and actually explain what we've just said to ChatGPT. Sometimes the list of attached files contains files that are too big to send. Only this happens. Process just fails to create the email, and we put the last one into the send fail record ID to change the procedure so that we take the list of files in our FA, check their size against the limits set in send mail, and only attach files that are smaller than the limit. Okay, so it's going to go away now, and it's going to think about it, and it's going to give us that information. Oh, nice cup of coffee. So as you can see, ChatGPT writes out the whole of the stored procedure, and it's a little bit slow because of the way that ChatGPT streaming service works. Here's some music while we wait. Okay, so it's doing the new bit now. It's put in a file cursor here. So it's going to try and do some clever stuff with the list of files that we're passing in. Okay. Interestingly, I didn't tell it that the list of files was separated by a semicolon. It's obviously guessed that because that's the way you create a file list for passing through to SendMail. So that was quite clever. So what's going on here? It hasn't finished the stored procedure. Why not? Continue. Oh dear, ChatGPT, you've got something confusing there. Okay, so it's saying it's added a parameter called max attachment size to store the maximum allowed attachment size. Please add this parameter to the power config table with the desired value in bytes. Procedure now checks the size of each file in FFO using a cursor. If the file size is within the allowed limit, it's added to the valid attachments variable. This email is then sent with only the valid attachments. Okay, let's have a look at that code then, see what it's done in here. Um, so um, so it's created an empty string, valid attachments. Okay, it's now going to cursor through these records. It's going to use the string split functionality to do that. And it's going to cursor through those records, and it's going to use XP file exists, and it's going to go to file and file size. Okay. And if it's under the maximum attachment size, it's going to append it to the list. Okay, which is exactly what it said it was going to do. So I've got a couple of issues with this. So the first one is that I know this needs to run on SQL Server 2012 and string split doesn't exist. So we're going to find a different way to split the string. The second problem is that we have a cumulative maximum file size. So we can't just check an individual file. We need to check to see whether the records it's trying to add to the valid attachments cumulatively come to more than the maximum. And the third thing is that I believe we can actually check in the system to see what the maximum size is. So let's try and fix those one at a time. So I should have mentioned this needs to run on SQL 2012 and the split string doesn't exist. Can you rewrite? Okay, so it's told me the way to get around this is to write my own version of string split. And it's suggesting we do that using char index. So again, we'll just let it write its code. No, no, it's finished. ChatGPT is obviously a bit busy this morning. Try it again. So again, it's trying to use char index to do this splitting. Right. Okay, so let's have a look and see what it's suggesting that we do in this split string function. So it's going to take in the string and the character we want to split it on. So it's assuming a single character as a delimiter, which isn't always going to be the case, but it is in this situation. And it's then going to do a while loop, and it's going to run through that and basically look for the delimiter, and if it gets it, it's going to put it into a temp table, or in this case an in-memory table, and then it's going to return that table as a solution. Okay, so that's not going to be particularly performance for large strings. Don't like car index. It will be slow. Is there another way? It's being particularly obtuse today. It gave me a much better option than this yesterday. It might need a little bit of help. I'll give it one more chance to come up with the right answer. That's the one we're looking for. Looking for tally tables. Mm. No, it's not using tally tables. It's doing something else. Interesting. So what I can take from this is that it doesn't always give you the most optimal answer, but it will give you something that's usable. So I know the answer I want to get to, which is using tally tables, so I'm going to actually specifically prompt it now, which didn't have to do yesterday. And that's another interesting thing. You ask the same questions, and ChatGPT can take a different path. Um, so it might be that you actually need to do this a couple of times if you don't like the way it's heading. If I wasn't doing this for recording, I would have probably stopped this and started it again. Hopefully, anybody watching this is seeing there's different ways to solve the same problem, which may or may not be what you want. No, that's not a tally table. You just change the name of the variable. Right. 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 I'm going to give up on this line of inquiry because it's not going where I want it to go. I'm actually going to tell it the solution that I want it to use. So delimited split 8K was written by a fantastic gentleman called Jeff Moden. It is probably the industry standard way to split a string into a table. Um, it's not always the most efficient way, and there are a couple of modifications to it written by other people, but um, it's pretty useful most of the time. And you've only got edge cases where you have stupidly large data sets where delimited split 8K doesn't work. Um, and it clearly understands delimited split K because it still understands it and needs to pass through the string and the delimiter to it. Okay. Um, can you give me the whole? So let's see what that's done to the code. This is one thing with ChatGPT is you do spend a long time waiting for it to write out code if it's got a large code set to produce. And that's especially frustrating when there's bits of the code base which aren't actually relevant to the problem you're trying to solve. So a lot of the time what I'll do is I will abstract the problem and get ChatGPT to just give me the solution to the abstracted bit, and then I will manually add that back into the code base that I've got. But I wanted to show here how it can do it with the entire file. Oh wow, it's done something really odd in there. We'll come back up to that in a minute when it's finished writing the store procedure. It's given up with doing what's replaced. Okay, let's have a look and see what we've got. Right, so we are going through my cursor for each of the records we need to process. And I'm declaring a file, large arm max, and a file cursor. Value attachment going through. So it understands the delimited split 8K returns something called item. So you get item number and item in delimited split 8K. Go and Google it if you're not familiar with it. It's a really useful function. This is the bit that's made my eyes pop out. Select the data length from bulk column from open row set, and it's going to try and open the file and read the file size from that. Now, one of the files I was having a problem with was 24 meg in size. That is going to just blow up in your face in terms of data. There isn't any need to actually open the file. We can do it using a couple of different methods. So let's just get it to rewrite that bit first. Which it used before. It used XP file exist. Now, when I did this yesterday, it didn't suggest that as an option. So that's going to be interesting. Again, we have to wait for it to write the whole thing. So just bear with me, callers. And it stops. Okay, let's not worry about it stopping for the moment. So look at this XP file exist. So I have to say I've been writing SQL code for the best part of 20 years. I didn't know XP file existed. Yesterday when I did this, we used XP command shell to actually run a directory command and get the file size from there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask it whether XP file exists has to be opened up on the surface area configuration. And if it does, it's going to need to check to see whether that is done. Otherwise, it can't run this logic. So the answer is yes, it does, and it's going to tell me how to do it. So, oh, right, right, okay. Can we use XP command shell instead? Okay, so let's see what it's done. Okay, and it's giving you instructions on how to open command shell activate command shell using the interface, you can actually do it programmatically as well. So let's have a look and see what we've got in the file size command. So it's trying to do a loop, and it's going to output some information which includes the file name and the size. That's what this -zi does. Okay, so that's fine. Okay. So the next problem I'm going to solve is the fact that it's building this cumulative file list here, which may still blow our attachment size. Okay. So let's explain it. Although you are moving single files over the max limit, the limit is cumulative. Can you modify the code so that we stop attaching files once we hit the limit? Okay, so I'm suspecting what it's going to do is going to add another check now to keep a running total of how far we've got, and it's not going to update the running total if the next file in sequence takes us over the limit. The other way it might do it is it might actually create a temp table and do it from there. Okay, let's have a look, see what it's done. So it's created a file size table, which has got the file size string in it. Okay. So if the let's set a cumulative size to 0. So if the current cumulative size plus the next file size takes us over the doesn't take us over the max, add it to the valid attachments, and then increment the cumulative size to include the file size, and then we keep going. Once it's done that, so as soon as cumulative size goes, cumulative size will never go over because we're always checking it incrementally, so we'll always be underneath. Once we've finished, we delete from the file size table, and then we move on. Not sure that's right. Actually, we're inserting the record into the file size table, we're checking to see whether it's big enough, and then we're deleting it. Then we're getting the next file size. So we've only ever got one record in the file size table. Okay. Bit of an odd way of approaching it, but that works and it's going to be reasonably performant. Okay. Right. So the next problem I've got is that if we come back up to here, where's the full stop procedure? We are getting the maximum attachment size out of the config table. We don't want to do that because it means we've got to set it. I think we can actually get that out of the system. Can we get the max file size from the database configuration rather than from PAL config? Why is it trying to do server memory? That's not what we asked it for. Not max server memory. Database attachment file size. Max. No, we're going round in circles now. It's being particularly dense today. It did this brilliantly yesterday. No, it's yes and no. There is your Exchange server will be set up with a maximum file attachment size, but you can also set it up inside SQL Server as to what its maximum file attachment size can be. And you can set that larger than Exchange, and there's no way you can check Exchange, but this is actually telling a porcupine. So I'm just going to switch back to my actual store procedure result that I generated yesterday and find out what the configuration value is called. So bear with me. It's going to need some help. Okay, so I've forgotten where we get to. So let's have the whole store procedure. Can you give me the whole procedure, please? Okay, it didn't do what I asked it to. Did you missed the code in the middle? You give it all to me. And ChatGPT doesn't go all the way back to the conversation every time. It only uses generally recent correspondence to get its context. So that's why we need to make sure we still have a copy of the full store procedure available whenever we get too long. So it's gone back to using file exist. Oh dear. We don't want file XP file exist. We are using XP command shell instead. That's significantly faster. Maybe ChatGPT 4 is too difficult. Continue. So what have we got now? So back to using class size, try cast size. Yeah, okay. And we're doing diligence split okay, so that's okay. And we're getting the max file size out of the sysmail configuration. That's okay. So doing cumulative files. So XP command shall may not be active. Can you wrap the file size checking code in some logic so that it only runs if it is available, if not, just bypass. Okay, what's it done now? It's made some changes, I think. So we're doing sysmail configuration to get the maximum file size. Doing the file statements, doing file table, doing display string. Now it's from file goes into the file. That file size table there is an in-memory table. And now it's trying to create a hash file size table. And it's having to drop it and recreate it if it exists. Insert into file size table, can't show. So it's going to do it as a begin, try, and begin and a catch block. Yeah, that probably would work, but it's a bit bonkers because it's going to throw an error if XP command shell isn't available. And actually it isn't doing the rest of it. Okay, so two things. Firstly, you have that file size table which you are not using. Secondly, rather than use try catch, you just check the configuration to see if it is enabled and only run the code in a C condition. So now it's doing it in a, so it's checking system configurations for the XP command shell and then use one. Otherwise, it now wraps everything inside a begin. Okay. Ooh. The syntax of is confusing. Can you add comments to explain how it is working? Okay, so what it said in the comments. Here we go. The %i represents each file in the loop, and the %zi returns the size of the file. Okay, brilliant. It's then going to add it, a load of other comments, which didn't ask it to do. I don't like my comments. Can you change them to block comments? So give me all the store procedures there. So what have we got here? Just open the profile, do valid attachments, looping through files. While fetch status is true. So although this works, it's a bit cockeyed because if this sysconfigurations isn't done, why bother doing any of the file cursoring stuff? Conditions that never changes. It would make more sense to check the mission first and only do the file cursor if it is true. I should have used GPT-3 in the first place. Look how fast that is compared to GPT-4. And the problem is it doesn't give you a single hit. So let's see what that's done. Where is it doing the check now for command shell? No, that's not what we want to do. That's on the outer cursor. Right. Let's have a look, see if it's got that right now. So we're running the outer cursor with the correct logic. I'm doing that. If exists command shell and it's 1. We've got valid attachments there. Okay. So what happens is if it doesn't run, valid attachments is going to be null or not exist. Mm-hmm. If the is not set, make sure you touch the original file list if the G is bypassed. So two ways you could do this. Either it could use the original variable and just try passing stuff in, or it could use a coalesce. Okay, not the way I would have approached it, but it looks like it works. Let's just make sure that the code. So if the valid attachments is 0, then use the original attachments. No, that's not what I asked for, because it may be that, is it, if all the attachments are too big, hmm. So if all the attachments are too big, we're going to attach the original attachments, but then the creation of the email fails, so that's no good. Um, mm, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to send the email, but without any attachments. No. Let's have a look, see what that's done. Attachments, instead of pending attachments directly, I've created a new variable called attachments to store the valid attachments. Function is not empty, attachment otherwise attachments are set to null. When valid attachments is greater than 0, then use that, else null. Okay. So I think that'll work. It's going on the list block quote. Uh, Plus the explanation. So it's set my variables here to be varchar 1000. See what we had right at the very beginning. Yeah, we had 1000, so that's okay. So the only thing I want to do now is, can you add the block header from the original stored procedure? Dugga, 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 dugga. Let's have a look, see what we got. Ba, 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 ba. Okay, now this is going to be a challenge a bit. I would like it to put in here details of what it's changed and why. Can you modify? Can you add to the modifications in the block header? Days, date, your initials as modifier, my initials, ADR as reference, and a reasonable description of the change. That's going to be a tough one. Today's date, 5th of 5th, 23, by OpenAI. My initials, added file size checking for attachments, exclude attachments, exclude the sideline, dynamically retrieved maximum attachment size from sysmail configuration, improved efficiency using cursor and XP command shell, added handling for unavailable command shell. Yeah, we haven't said why. See how far back it remembers. Yep, did it. Right. That was about 3 times longer than I expected it to be and about 10 times more painful. Yesterday when I did this, when ChatGPT 4 servers probably weren't quite so overloaded because it was late in the evening, and I didn't give it the original store procedure as context, so I didn't have the outer cursor loop. Um, it came up with a solution which I thought was much more elegant in places, certainly more readable. Initially, we started off with XP command shell. In the end, it settled on for files. Rather than doing the logic where it was looping through the, where is it? There's a bit of code. Rather than just looping through the delimited split 8k, it actually ran the delimited split 8k and inserted it into a temp table. Then it went through the temp table and identified any files that were larger than any individual files larger than the size limit, and then decided to build a concatenated list using stuff for XML because I told it couldn't use string ag. I wanted it to use string ag, but it said it couldn't use string ag because this needs to work in SQL 2012, which was clever. So it used stuff for XML to actually take all the files that were under the where the cumulative file limit was under the maximum to work out which ones it could put in. This might be easier to read, and we've got there in the end. But boy, that was a painful process. What I take away from this is that you might need to have a couple of goes at ChatGPT to get what you want to use. You need to treat it like talking to a junior programmer. And at the end of the day, is it going to replace me and my job? I don't think so at the moment because you still need to understand the code that's been written and where the logical holes are going to be. For example, on the bit where it was trying to work out whether the string for the allowed files was empty and just fall back to using the original string, that wouldn't work, but you wouldn't necessarily expect a junior programmer to pick that up. So useful exercise. I hope other people find this of value and manage to get to the end. We did get there in the end, but it took quite a while. And did I save any time over doing what I would have done if I'd done it manually? Yes, probably. But was it as much fun? As a one-off exercise, yes. Would I want this to be my permanent programming environment? Probably not. So again, I hope you found this useful and interesting. Please leave comments below if you think there's anything it could have done better. Yeah, that's me signing off. See you next time.